Hello everyone. The case that our group is going to talk about today is negotiation about renting a house. This is my teammate Isaac, Benedict, Handeep, and Jahan. First, I will briefly introduce our process. Our group is going to tell a negotiation case that happened on my real life experience. The background of the negotiation case is renting a house. The specific negotiation process happened between me and the landlord. We need to negotiate to reach a consensus, and in this negotiation, we use non-zero sum theory to negotiate. Next, let Isaac mainly introduce the content of the case.
So Tom was searching for a lucky house to rent for a 3 month business in China. He learned from letting agents that the market rent around his workplace was 4,000 a month, and the agent's fee was half the monthly rent. He had a hard time finding a landlord with a vacant house, but the landlord said if Tom only rented for 3 months, his rent would increase by 1,000 per month. If he chose to start leasing at 5,000, obviously, he would lose a lot of money. While if he chose to look elsewhere, he might miss the work schedule but also not find a better place. Tom hopes the landlord will not raise the price so they could save money on agent's fee and the house will not keep vacant. However, the landlord rejected the proposal and insisted that once tenants move in, he had to pay extra for some requested furniture. The cost was too high for a tenant who only rents for 3 months. Tom said that if the landlord insisted on a 1,000 increase, he would have to give up as the cost of extra monthly 1,000 had far exceeded the cost of searching for a new place. As a perfect tenant with a stable job and a simple life, the landlord was reluctant to just let him go. So the landlord gave in and chose to raise it by 500 a month for the next 3 months. But Tom was asked to pay part of the cost of the new furniture. Tom found that the cost of raising the price by only 500 was slightly lower than that of finding a new place. Finally, Tom chose to rent a house with a 500 increase. Now Benedict will take you to series.
Hi guys. Game theory is a study of the mathematical model of decision making between the rational players engaged in the conflict or cooperation to solve a problem. A zero-sum game is a mathematical representation in game theory of a situation involving two parties, the outcome of which is an advantage for one party and an equal loss for the others. In non-zero-sum game theory, the gain or loss of one decision maker does not necessarily lead to the loss or gains of the other decision makers. Among the game theory, a static game is one in which all players act at the same time, or even though they act in a sequence. A dynamic game is one in which players' actions are in order, and the latter can observe the former choices and respond accordingly. Different players are acting at a different point in time, like a chess. And the classical perennial dilemma is set up to in such a way that both parties choose to protect themselves at the expense of the others. It is also a non-cooperative form where each participant makes a single action coherently without sufficient communications and cooperations. As a result, both participants find themselves in a worse situation than if they cooperated with each other in the decision-making process. The present dilemma presents a situation in which two separate and incommunicable parties must each choose between cooperating with the others. When both parties choose to cooperate, the highest reward for each party appears. In present dilemma, Nash equilibrium is a steady state of the system involving the interaction of different actors, in which no actor can benefit from the unilateral change in strategy if the strategies of the others remain the same. Another one is a Pareto optimal. It means everyone involved in the negotiation achieved the best result while without harming the other players. Now we move to the analysis part.
Okay. According to the case, the landlord wants to rent the house at a higher price, which is 5,000. And Tom would like to get the house at an average level of area, which is 4,000. This is in line with the two original assumptions of game theory. The first, players are acting in self-interest and trying to maximize their own utility. Second one, players are rational and logical and follow certain strategies to make rational choices. And our case is a typical non-zero-sum game, because whether the Tom rents or not, his gain or loss does not necessarily result in landlord's gain or loss, which means the landlord could still find the other tenants and Tom is still able to rent other houses. Please move to the next slide. And the negotiation process between Tom and the landlord is a dynamic game, because an essential characteristic of all dynamic game is that some of players can condition their optimal actions based on actions taken by other players. Both parties will try to gather information to prepare for the negotiation. Refer to our case. Tom learned that the average rent of the area is around 4,000, and Tom has a good rental history and lives 3 months. So the landlord wished to increase the rent to 5,000 a month. After careful consideration, Tom decided to refuse him. When the landlord understood Tom's unwillingness to pay the rent, the landlord started to have a second thought. He was not happy to lose a good tenant, so that the landlord gave in and chose to raise the price by 500 per month in the next 3 months. And he asked Tom to pay part of the cost of new furniture. Finally, they came to an agreement through compromise. In our case, as Tom and the landlord could learn of each other's intentions and actions, they weigh and formulate the decisions and strategies. This is consistent with the theory of dynamic games. A game is a situation in which your payoff depends on not only on what you do, but what the others do. So next, Karen's part, please.
Prisoner's Dilemma is a typical non-cooperative game, which means all participants take one action at the same time, usually under the conditions of uncertainty and limited communication. However, in real life, people always try to seek cooperation or negotiation to solve problems and promote development, which provides us an opportunity to avoid reaching the Nash equilibrium point. Same goes for our case. There is communication among both the parties, Tom and the landlord, which will help them both reach the best possible outcome. And the best possible outcome in this scenario is where Tom and the landlord both choose to compromise with their self-interest and try to achieve Pareto optimality. As Pareto optimality understands everyone involved in the negotiation can achieve their best results without harming the other party. Therefore, in this case, it can be achieved when Tom and the landlord agrees on a sum of 4,500. And on the other hand, we have the Nash equilibrium. This will only happen when the things don't go the right way. And Nash equilibrium is reached when the player acts in their self-interest. And in this case, it won't be beneficial for anyone, as the tenant won't be able to rent and the landlord will not be able to give his property to the tenant. And the other two options we have here aren't really valid because they are not going to benefit any party, as one of the option, as it only benefits the one party and the other one bears a loss. Next slide, please. Hence, we have a win-win situation for both the parties where they both reach the optimal, Pareto optimal, breaking the Nash equilibrium and via compromising their self-interest. Thank you.
In conclusion, through this real case, we can see that by using the prisoner's dilemma case strategy to negotiate, both parties finally achieve a win-win goal. Tom achieved the purpose of reducing the monthly rent, while the landlord achieved the purpose of reducing the cost of new furniture. So both sides in this case have obtained corresponding interest in this negotiation. Prisoner's dilemma is the crucial mathematical tool for us to simulate the result and remind us to avoid the limitation of the prisoner's dilemma. In this case, both parties are unwilling to make concessions, so the final result is that both parties compromise, thus breaking the Nash equilibrium. All in all, the prisoner's dilemma strategy is suitable for negotiation in the context of rental housing, and this strategy can lead to a win-win situation for both parties in the negotiation. Thank you. That's all.